So this has been a pretty good week. Started off with, on Sunday, my cousin and I went skating after the family get together for Mother's Day, and we were talking the whole time. So, I caught when we were at 4 miles, and then I had turned the volume down on my phone while we were talking, and then next thing I know, when I looked at my phone next, we were at 12 miles. We ended up wrapping it up at 13. And since we both kind of eaten a bunch of food at the Mother's Day thing, we were expecting that it would be a rough skate and it would kick our asses. And then it didn't, because we pretty much forgot or we weren't even paying attention. So it just, you forget to pay attention, then it gets easier apparently. So I've done 2 posts for the blog this week, and I was feeling kind of proud about that because I hadn't been able to concentrate on getting anything done there, and like the last 2 things that I wrote, it was like they were just coming to me easier. And I think I spent a couple days on each of them. But the first one, the day that I posted it, ended up being May 15th, which was my great-grandma's birthday, so 515 is one of those numbers that kind of follows me around, and then that seemed like a really good day to get one of those posted. Even though it was technically on the 14th when I was doing most of the work for it, but when I finally got it posted, it was after midnight, and it clicked over. So that was fun. And then I did another one last night, and same thing. It kind of posted under today's date. So yeah. But I've been feeling good because they were pretty easy to write this time around, and that's been, I think the bigger issue in the past has been I overthink it, or maybe I don't have a specific direction that I'm going for or whatever, and then I just complicate it myself. That I'm confident that is something I do. Yeah. So yesterday, my aunt went walking with me and the kids here, who have suddenly started going nuts with licking themselves now that I've started a video. Ziva was here in the front seat with me, and she was resting, and then I started talking, and then she got up and started squirming around again. But anyway, yesterday my aunt came with us, and we were kind of talking. Another thing that happened on Sunday. So before Sunday, actually, my aunt that I walked with yesterday, her daughter has been trying to talk her into getting a puppy. In part, I think largely because she's got a dog that my aunt and uncle watch pretty often when they go to see her husband's family and all that. So it'd be nice for Ellie to have somebody to play with. Well, her big push has been she thinks her dad would be happier because he seems the happiest when Ellie is around and he has, the dog to play with. And he's pushing retirement. He wants to get there a lot quicker than everybody else is saying. He's talked about retiring early. And everybody's like, just hold out. It's not that much further. So either way, that's not too far off. And so my cousin has been pushing that they should get a dog. Well, conveniently, my other aunt has a friend who has corgi puppies. And it's kind of funny that it's a corgi because my niece loves corgis. She got into watching, I think they're called Hammy and Olivia. on YouTube and was all about watching their videos all the time, and I think one of them died, and that kind of slowed her down on that, but she has been super into corgis ever since. So now it's a corgi that she's looking at, or that my aunts were looking at, which is kind of fun. My mom told her that she couldn't, well, we wouldn't be able to watch it because she doesn't trust that Taz, or it would be able to be around Taz. And it's like, okay, Taz, my big goofy healer back here, he is a fabulous dog. He's a rescue, and he has this nice little anxious habit of chomping his teeth. Now, when they all get excited and are barking at the window or something, he's not above turning around and nipping one of the others in the shoulder. So I usually try to make him have something in his mouth as soon as I see something's getting ready to happen. But my mom's like, oh, he couldn't do it, he'd kill it. It's like, stop trying to talk my dog into having a problem, first off. I know that him especially, I mean, healers are hard-headed anyway, and then he was a rescue, so I don't know what his situation was before that, but he's been with me for, I think, 7 years now, so, yeah, and part of that, I was not fabulous on training because I was kind of in a depressed state with the whole divorce thing and trying to deal with that. But it actually has, I mean, it's so funny how everything's working together. Way back when I returned to the YouTube round 2, I think back in March, I talked in one video about how I had watched this Gem Goddess video in 2020, and she said black dogs are important. And of course, as I said then, this is the only time in my life I've ever had black dogs, and I have 3 of them. And then in January, when I started taking these classes at the metaphysical shop, not too far away, one of the teachers on one night was talking about, we talked about protective stones and how you can ground yourself, because that's something I need to focus on, is grounding my energy, and shielding and protecting my energy. So she also kind of had a little add-on with, if you're not using the rocks, color also is helpful. And, black is a grounding color and protective color. So there's that. So then I was thinking, oh, that's kind of an interesting little point, because at a time that I didn't know I needed to be doing this, like the entire time I was with my ex-husband, okay, we got Ziva in 2013, like 4 months after we got married, and she was always super protective of me, and especially after I got my TBI, that was a big thing, but she, especially if my ex was anywhere around, she was frequently sitting in my lap, and growling at him often. So then in Annie's class, she said, or like the next week we were talking about colors and what colors represent, and she said, somebody asked about black, and Annie said that she thinks of black as the color of source because everything comes from nothing, or comes out of the void. It's like, that really hit me and has stayed with me ever since, because it was like, So I got these dogs. I didn't think anything of it. Just, well, we got Ziva because my ex had a Kelpie previously, and for whatever reason, he said it was his dream dog, and he was always pissed because his ex-wife before me had taken the Kelpie. So we got Ziva. Of course, she hated him and was quickly my dog. And we're tight. So then, we tried. Okay, my big thing was always not so much, I don't really care about what the dog looks like, what kind of breed it is, so much as I prefer rescues. So we rescued a pit, and it was not a good time for us to try that endeavor. He had it for, I think, 3 or 4 months when I was back in Indiana finishing school. It was it was actually, I think, okay, so I tried leaving my ex at least once a year, every year that we were together, before it was finally successful. So in 2015, we moved to Alabama, and then in 2016, I finished my last semester of seminary, and I had come up here, like December 1st. It was the day after our anniversary. And I came back before he got home from work, and ended up, it was more of an excuse for the finishing school, but I was trying to get out of it, and it was not working well at all as far as leaving. But it's like there was that voice. Now I'm thinking back of it, the voice, the same one that was like, don't marry him, you don't like each other, you don't even love each other, all that fun stuff. When I was walking down the aisles, the same voice was back, and it was very excited when I started talking about separating again. Or like that time. And I got to the point where I was finally big and bold enough to make the move and try to save my ass and get out of there. And then, as was the frequent issue, he always attributed it to I couldn't be without my parents, and that was the problem. But the problem was really when I was with him and knew how he was treating me and making me feel, then I recognized that it was an issue. But then when I was back with my family, I saw how much they hated him, and it's like, wait, was it me or was it them hating him that affected me? And the crazy thing is, most of the time, like when I was trying to separate from those connections, most of the time there are 2 trucks coming in my general direction, so I might have to pause again. So most of the time leading up to it, I wasn't talking to okay, so most of the time that I left, it ended up being this back and forth, and it's like, is it me with these feelings? Like, is this just me? Or am I being influenced by others that I know can't stand him? And that was the big issue, I think, every time I would leave, because then I would hear how much my family hated him, and it's like, yeah, I know. But then I would forget about all the other stuff. And this is kind of why I think journaling is supposed to be it's supposed to have been something I should have been doing all along, all the time. But you know, even when I started writing things down and it was sticking more, why I was trying to leave before, I don't know, it's just once we'd separate and then he'd make me feel bad, and then again with the not knowing what's mine and not, it was a big hot mess. So yeah, so in 2016 I finished my last semester of seminary. When we moved down there, I did a semester where I was turning in work online and connecting to the instructors that way. So, I got this handy water bottle that you just flip down and pull water out of it when they start licking things. So anyway, in May, we ended up getting this rescued pit. And she was a great dog. And she and Ziva loved each other and had fun playing in the yard and all that stuff. But there was... I think I went back to Alabama in July that year. And... Zippily. We're looking again. Just had a water break, but we're still... got an itch. Anyway, that was a great dog, and they had fun playing in the yard and all that stuff. And at the time, once I moved back down there, I got a job at a doggy daycare center, and I loved that job. Loved working with the dogs, and they were great. Then there was more drama with his ex and his kid, and it was just a big hot mess. And we were back and forth to Indiana. Ended up losing the job because I hadn't committed to Christmas. Probably wasn't going to work out for me to work, and then it was a pain because I waited too long, and we ended up having enough family drama where there was no way I couldn't not be up here for the Christmas season. Anyway, it was an ordeal, and it was a problem, and that was the end of that job. But before we got to that point, in October, we had gone to Indiana, and his son was staying with his stepdad while his mom was not able to be around the kids. We'll just leave it at that. There was drama, big drama, and we were able to go visit his son before we went back to Alabama, but we had the dogs with us, so that was kind of a thing. And well, figured, okay, it's time for the kid to meet the dog, and DCS was cooperative with that. They were agreeable, but the dog was excited when she saw him mind you, I was not in a good headspace. I normally know dogs pretty well. And I was just kind of out of it, not knowing what was mine and being pulled every way by other people's energies as I see it now and realize what it was. But I quit. She jumped kind of up and was at his face enough that her tooth caught his lip and there was blood and he had to go get his lip glued back together. It was not a bite. But because we knew it would be shifted that way, we ended up taking her back to a rescue before we went back to Alabama, because we could not have that be a thing. That was keeping my ex from getting custody. So, my ex was all about calling it a bite and knew that his son's mom was going to be all over it as such. So we just needed that to not be an issue. So we took her back to the rescue, and I sat there with her in my lap and cried because I felt like I was letting her down. Yeah. I still struggle with that one, obviously. Only time I have ever had to give up on a dog, and it wasn't because I wanted to. It was more just out of a necessity, I guess. But then I was crushed when Ziva was bummed too. This is not where I was expecting this to go at all. But here we are. So, I've said many times that I wish I would have come to the realization that I needed to get rid of the ex sooner, and commit to that, and not had that experience with the dog. Although the ones that I have now, I know I'm supposed to have. And yeah. So, Stormcloud was she was gray and white. She was a beautiful dog. Love that dog. Big, goofy. But it was not the protective energy like these guys are. And I think that's part of it as I look back into it with these eyes. I mean, she was a great dog, and she and my ex seemed to get along just fine. My healer hated him. My Kelpie hated him. And the Australian Shepherd Healer mix, she didn't trust him. She didn't hate him per se, because she was 12 weeks old when we got her. Yeah. Okay, so Stormcloud went back to the rescue in October of 2016. Yeah, me and Ziva were very depressed after that, and so we started talking about getting another dog. And I had this thought, and it would have been a good thought had we not been at the point we were at that time, because then it was kind of depressed that had not worked out. Yeah. Ziva was 4, but since she's a Kelpie and she's always been crazy, I was thinking we needed to go with something that was a similar energy to her. So I wanted to go with a rescue, so I was looking at healers and shepherds and all this, like Australian shepherds, the energy types. And found Taz. He was, they called him Blue Regard. I did not like that. So he is a Taz now. Anyway, we got put on a wait list for him. There were like 3 or 4 other people ahead of us that wanted to check him out before our slot came up. So my ex kept looking because he was all in depressed and fill the void with something else mode, and he found this post online where somebody who was conveniently less than 10 minutes down the road from us had a litter of puppies, and they were Australian Shepherd Blue Heeler mix, and 12 weeks old, ready to go. There was one left, and $40. I was like, all right. I said, what are we going to do? Because of course we went after the puppy. It's like, what are we going to do when we come up for the rescue? And they ask us if we still want this other one. And he's like, well, why don't we take him too? It's like, okay. Funny as I look back at it, because at one point in time, I had said I thought 3 was a good number for dogs, because if you have just one and something happens to it, then it's really traumatic and depressing, and then it feels like you're replacing it when you get another one. 2, you have another one there with you, but if something happens to one, you know, you're still really depressed at the missing space from where that one was, because we did that too. Not with my ex. That was when I was growing up. We had 2 dogs, and then one of them died, and we were all depressed, including the other dog. So my thought was, if you get 3 and something happens to one, then it doesn't feel like you're replacing it, because you don't have to get another one right away, and you have 2 to kind of help you through the mourning period. And not feel like you're replacing anything. So that was the logic. And I don't regret it. It's been a learning experience. But it did take all 3 of these guys to help me get out of that relationship that last time too. You know, because before, you know, when I knew that it was coming, that I was leaving, but I hadn't started really getting too much of the steps going. There was a night that my ex was storming around, and he was actively going at Taz, trying to kick him, and forced me to stand up in his face and tell him to leave my dog alone, which was like the first time I ever stood up to him also. But when we were talking about it later, he's like, well, I hate male dogs. It's like, then why did you allow this to happen if it was such a problem that he was a male? That's dumb. But yeah, to try to take it out on him. Yeah. Anyway, Ziva's letting me pet her. She's letting me play her with her ears. So that was one of those big motivating things that started. It's like, okay, leaving, and okay, the second time I left, I had to leave Taz and Gidget behind, which that was before he said he hated male dogs, and tried to kick him. I don't know what things were like while I was not there, but I do know Taz spent a ridiculous amount of time, I would say easily 16 to 22 hours in the crate, just because he didn't want to have to deal with him, and he'd go do other stuff after working over at work, just because he didn't want to be at home. And when Gidget tore up one of his basketball hats, he punished Taz for it, even though he knew it was Gidget, the puppy. Taz got locked up and, started having to spend all his nights in the crate because, well, he wasn't going to have that. Well, except he was, because if you're not making the other one. Yeah. Anyway. And I know on at least one occasion he left them out overnight. And yeah, that's kind of been a thing. I was thinking back to how we started this video talking all positively, and here I am down this path. And I think there again, it's one of those things where it's kind of the universe showing me how far I've come myself. Yeah. But since I've been in a better headspace, especially in the past few months, and going further in this healing journey, I have made it a priority to walk these guys. I try for daily, but there were a couple days this week that it rained all day, and that was kind of not fabulous. I mean, I don't remember what else I had going on that day. I feel like there was something where it was less than ideal to go because I had something else I was doing. But I think if it was just the rain, that probably really wouldn't stop us too much. Anyway, yeah. So we got out of the car today over here. And I've said before, when we're walking, we meander more than anything. Of course, everybody's, we're at 7, 8, and 11 years old, so we meander a lot more. And today, we got out of the car, and they were all crazy, and I didn't know what exactly was going on, but they were back and forth and zigzagging, tying up their leashes with each other. And then we got to the prize at the end of it, and I realized I don't know how it got there, obviously, but there was a dead possum that they found, dead baby possum. And it's so we were probably on the trail of this mama possum that had been walking around, and then God only knows what happened. But yeah, they were all excited by that. It's leave that alone. But since we do that stuff now, I feel like they all are much better dogs when I'm at home now. And when I moved back and was all depressed, just at the fact that I'd been stuck there more than anything, that I'd left him. Gidget was the one that kept me having to keep moving forward, because she's so ball obsessed. And when we left, that was 5 years ago, so she was 2, and I had to contend with that, or I would suffer for it. Now, luckily, it takes less ball throwing to make her happy, and now that we're walking regularly, it's even better. So yeah, I don't feel like my mom just throwing out, Taz would kill it, or whatever. It's I don't feel like that's fair, because I feel like we're in a different space now. We're in a better headspace. We have a lot more clarity on my end. And I'm realizing the importance of protecting and shielding my energy. So, because of that, I'm in a much better place than I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah. And I've been thinking here lately, it's whatever comes around. Ziva loves puppies. Ziva is an excellent dog for anytime we've had to train, like when we started working with Taz, or when I started working with Taz after we brought him home, and then Gidget especially. And initially we were trying to keep Taz and Gidget separated a little bit. Eventually it became fun because they would run real hard in the backyard and they loved each other until they'd start getting to that point where, because they were both young, they once it got to be too much, then they'd start getting snippy with each other. So then I would separate them and they would go and spend an hour or two in their crates taking naps and resting hard to recover. And it was a very helpful time period. And I've been thinking here lately, it's like Ziva, I think, needs an opportunity to work with more puppies again. Like, she has been the greatest, I think, that I've ever spent any time training. She's the easiest dog I've ever housebroke because I cheated. We had Ziva, and then I still claim them. We had 4 dogs that we had gotten while I was living with my parents. So they were my parents' dogs too. Well, the rat terrier was mostly mine because I brought him home from a rescue without asking first. It was one of those ask forgiveness over permission kind of things. So at that time, there were 3 Shelties. And, okay, the oldest one was my baby that we got my senior year in high school. And that dog was amazing. And when I was in undergrad, my parents got a couple puppies, and they got them, they were born in January, so I was getting ready to move home after college when they got the 2 puppies. And at that time, initially, there was another Sheltie, but we were told she'd probably had 6 months left with cancer, and then she ended up living another 2 years. So after she died, I don't know where it was in the time span, really. We had the 3, so that 3 was a good number. We didn't have to replace anybody. It was, I think, a year or 2 after that, I was on Pet Finder, and I found this little rat terrier mix. He reminded me of the dog we had when the dog that found us when I was a year old, and we had him until I was 8. It was a little Chihuahua mix. And so when I found him on this rescue, it's like, must go to this dog. And at first I did the foster. It was the foster to keep program. And really the first time I brought him home, I wanted to see how he was with the other dogs. They took right to him. And so then it was just, I had to get my mom to warm up to him. And then now, she said a couple nights ago that he was one of those dogs that will never be forgotten. He can never be replaced. He was one of a kind. It's like, and you didn't even want him when I first brought him home. He perked up and started wagging his little nub as soon as she walked in the door, and she saw what I had done. She was just like, and didn't even come in to talk to me. She went straight in the other room, and that little dog he was so crushed. It's like he just wilted. I was like, oh. So, my mom's Sheltie was one of the one of the two puppies that we brought home together, she took right to him, and he we used to joke that he was or she was his little girlfriend, but they were just, she had that great energy. She actually trained me a lot too, because I used to watch her. She was funny. It's like, that dog is the low-key alpha. It's like, she doesn't have to throw her weight around or anything. She was the smallest one in the group, but if anybody else started growling at each other or acting like there was going to be an issue, she would just go stand in between them, and like, it was just, her energy would calm them down. And hold on. Okay, so there was a guy on a bike, and he saw me and I saw him, and the dogs were napping, so thankfully it was not an issue. Anyway, so she taught me that about leadership, that just, you know, you have the right energy, you can influence the room just with that. So when I got Ziva, I was taking her over to my parents' house as often as I could, and I think I had a handful of messes from her, and, you know, they showed her the dog door, they showed her that's where you went to potty, and that was it. So she was like the easiest one to housebreak ever. And then just being around their energy, she learned a lot. So I like having her as my little sidekick on meeting new puppies and all that stuff. And I know sometimes she starts growling if the energy is too much, and I think it makes people nervous because they automatically assume growling is bad. It's like, growling's not bad. She's just telling it that's not acceptable behavior and to calm down. So she's been fabulous. She helped me with the other two. But then the issue we had then was when I had to leave the other two behind for a while. Still bothers me because we are just now coming over some of those issues. But yeah, that was a whole lot of talking about dogs. Which I know I can talk about that for a ridiculously long time because I love dogs. And now that there's the potential for another puppy to come in the family soon, it's more exciting again. Well, for me, everybody loves puppies, so especially in our family. So yeah. And I've been looking at lately, like, whoever I end up with is going to have to love dogs as much as I do. And they're just going to have to get it, because that last ordeal did not work. And it wasn't, the dogs were the least of the issue, but I mean, well, I say that, but they were kind of a big issue. Yeah. I think I've bounced everywhere in this. Staying focused mostly on dogs, and the shielding and energy protection thing. I've gone everywhere, whatever. On that note, it's 43 minutes in, just saw 333 on the camera at that, so I'm gonna call it, I think. And I don't know, maybe I'll skate tonight because it feels awesome out. As always, I appreciate you, whether you made it this far or not. And what a ride. Until the next time. Bye.